Let's see if that killed the buzz.
You always do.
Welcome to the edge of nowhere. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Carr, here along with my co-host and the Merry to my Pippin, Mr. Matt O'Zero, a.k.a. the Moz. How we doing today, Moz?
Not bad, not bad. Like it.
Yeah, the Merry to my Pippin.
We're more like Legolas and Gimli, though. It's more of a tighter homoerotic bond there.
Yeah, and I'm definitely more of a Gimli. I got I got the beard.
You're Gimli.
I definitely have the beard for the
There's
Gimli.
no argument.
I'm a very tall dwarf.
Yeah.
That's basically what I am.
There you go.
But anywho, as per usual, we are going to start this episode 8, I believe, with some old business. Moz, you said you had one quick piece.
Yeah, I just wanted to hit you with this. At the end of or the beginning of your first thought experiment.
Okay, the UAP. Yeah.
The UAP. Your Axis Mundi, he always sets up a little tree of life in the middle of the table.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of your thought experiment, that tree just went off the table, like for the first time ever. So, like, your thought experiment actually toppled the world tree. And I thought I would point that out.
That kind of makes sense. It did go completely off the rails at one point.
Yes, I'm just, that's all I'm saying. That's all I got.
I don't know, should I apologize for that one? I mean, there was some good info in there. I did get really weird with it, though, as I went.
Well, we have a lot of apologies because actually listening back to my first, and you got to realize we're just starting out here, gang, but my first one, Skin
Walker.
I mean, we really had, at one point I said, this podcast is getting far too silly. And I realized I probably should have said that after everything either of us said.
And then it just got sillier.
It just got sillier. So just forgive us. We're
trying to be very informative. But
and entertaining.
Our comedy side kind of takes over sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, we'll strike a right balance as time goes on.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay, so that's out of the way. We will turn it to Moz now because he is about to bring us down another one of his
rabbit holes.
Dark rabbit holes.
That's right. So prerequisites. This is part 1 of our Shapeshifter saga. You might want to go back and listen to the Skin
Walker
episodes, although they do get far too silly.
Far too silly.
But, especially that Where the Wild Things Are thesis, I think, is important. So
that wasn't as silly as I was expecting. That actually kind of blew my mind, honestly.
I kind of thought it might. So my goal is to go back and destroy my whole childhood kind of episode by episode. So that's what
Fair enough.
Kind of going with it. But shapeshifting is a global phenomenon that reaches back to the dawn of time. It's truly astounding how this surfaces from pole to pole. And you're going to have heard some of this in this. I know I tried to stay focused on the Skin
Walker,
but it became more about shamans and shapeshifters.
How it all ties together.
Right.
That's kind of what we try to do here.
And this is going to be expanding upon some of those themes again. I'm going to try not to be repetitive, but at the same time, we're going to go to some of these places because they come up a lot.
Fair.
So they need a little bit more explanation.
Well, we might get a little repetitive at times with some of this stuff, but it's just because we want to keep it fresh in the brain because it is an educational sort of thing too,
We might get repetitive with this stuff because we want to keep it fresh in the brain. And we're getting some feedback. You might have heard we're getting finally played this for people and they're like, "What are you smoking?"
Yeah.
So we're gonna, they're fun. We've enjoyed them. We want to make it so others can enjoy it.
There you go.
But I tried to define shapeshifters and start there, and it's actually harder than you think. And the reason is because a lot can be happening with the shapeshifter phenomenon, but if I'm in the room and you're in the room, some things could be going on, but others may not see any kind of physical change, and yet there might be something really happening between you and I sitting here that is defined as some kind of a change or some kind of a shift.
Right.
I could be astrally projecting my consciousness elsewhere. I could be doing this, that, or the other thing, or I could be transforming into something else.
And not everyone who's present will actually see it, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it gets murky. I had a hard time just starting to define it, and I got a thing for you to read to kind of explain why.
Oh, I'm reading already?
You're reading already.
Sneaking up on me. Okay. The following story relates to a shaman called Paralop of the Srednaya Kolyma region of Russia. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. Paralop was credited with possessing healing and precognitive abilities. He was known to have predicted a fire to an electric power station 1 week before the event had occurred. Paralop had a wood grouse as his spirit helper. One day the shaman decided to visit a friend, Karka, from the village Katingnak. Huh?
Yeah, bad.
Karka had noticed a bird flying towards him and tried to shoot it with his gun. The bird escaped. A few days later, Paralop approached Karka, saying, "You nearly shot me the other day before yesterday. Why did you try to do this?"
Yeah, and that's from neuroquantology.com. And it's just a quick story to kind of give the idea that, was there someone lying in bed? Was he the bird? Are you shape-shifting into something? Are you astrally projecting? Things get murky when we talk about shapeshifters really quickly, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
So it's like, was he actually the bird, or was he just seeing through the bird's eyes?
Right. We got the half-sleep, half-awake stuff we talked about last time. We got hallucinogens. We got other altered states of consciousness. The Australian shapeshifting occurs in the dreaming time. The whole thing gets very dreamy and murky. Presumably, for the most part, these shapeshifter events, I think someone is sleeping back in bed for the vast majority of these things. Full transformation is what we're trying to get to, because I think that's the real monster lore tour piece of it. Right. But in trying to define it, I came up with something on the literary side from Samantha J. Cairo, The Significance of Shapeshifting and Transformation in Medieval Welsh and Icelandic Literature. This is from her thesis. Shapeshifting, metamorphosis, and transformation are important mechanisms in folk tales and literature throughout the world. Use of these terms, specifically the term shapeshifting, generally means a person or creature who is able to change their shape at will or by the aid of another. Shapeshifters may be evil or benign depending on the need created in the story for the particular talents. Shapeshifters may change their shape by some inner magic ability, through a magic object, or by ingesting something which causes the transformation.
Oh, and there's your psychedelics.
There you go. And she lists the most common terminology for shapeshifting in her little thesis to these 5: metamorphosis, lycanthropy, skin turning, transformation, and shapeshifting. But I was able to get these, I tried to get these things into a kind of a collective camp at the end of it. And the end of part 2, there's going to be a quiz for you. It's going to involve some cartoons.
Oh boy. So you're not supposed to tell us about the pop quiz ahead of time.
Well, I want you to put you're usually very good at putting your thinking cap on. So
I love when you quiz me about this stuff.
You do very well, usually. Shapeshifters are those individuals not... Oh, wait, this was your reading. Jeremy to read too.
Let me pick that back up. Shapeshifters are those individuals, not necessarily human, with the power to shift into other creatures, from human to animal or vice versa. And during this transformation process, these beings or entities can be perceived as undergoing some physical transformation by observers, or, at the very least, can project their consciousness in a meaningful and verifiable way into another animal or creature. So there you go.
Yeah, I was looking at the who that reference was. That was my definition. That's why I couldn't find it. So
there you go.
That's a definition I came up with.
Oh, that's very well written. Well done.
What I think, if this thing were to happen even with Paralop, I mean, what we'd hope folks would do if something ever happens like this is you kind of want to verify. What was I wearing? How many shots did I take? What were there's got to be a way that you can kind of tease this out, that, oh, you really were a bird flying over me and I shot at you. What was I wearing? What did I say? What did I curse after I missed you? Whatever.
Right.
Obviously, this is not a lab experiment.
Show me the spot where it happened,
right?
Kind of thing. Yeah.
We see so many times in documentaries, people kind of drop the ball with references to size, how far away was the tree, how big was this thing. We see a lot of gaps.
That is a big problem with a lot of the cryptid videos, Bigfoot and whatnot, that they're kind of far away and there's no real scale. Like, you're not really sure how big they really are and how fast they're really moving and stuff.
Yep. It gets complicated. I started out this little adventure with 2 books. John Kachuba's Shapeshifters, A History. He's the Scully of that side of our Scully-Mulder believability scale.
Okay.
And then Nick Redfern, Shapeshifters, Morphing Monsters, and Changing Cryptids. He's the Mulder side.
He's our Mulder. Gotcha.
So it was good. It was actually great 2 books to kind of kick off this thing.
Oh, yeah, it's totally the way to do it. Totally the way to do it.
And I won't be talking about the Greco-Roman variety, by the way. Generally, I try to stay away from the fearsome critters, the fearsome creatures, those lumberjack stories that were just these silly camp stories. And Greco-Roman, we will touch on those things at different times, but basically, I kind of summed it up.
What's an example of the Greco-Roman that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, all the therianthropes that they come up with, even the Sphinx and
the Minotaur.
The Sphinx is more Egyptian.
The Centaur,
the Centaurs, all that stuff is,
Ooh, the Cyclops.
The Cyclops.
I like the Cyclops.
But I did sum it up so we could move on. And you want to know what the main gist of the whole Greco-Roman shape-shifting genre is about?
Sure.
To pork, punish, or protect. The 3 Ps. That's about it. It's just Zeus on the prowl again,
I'm just glad you didn't make them Fs. Good job on making them Ps.
Don't tell Hera. But where do we find these things? Nick Redfern talks about shapeshifter tendencies to appear around bridges, tunnels, water, and graveyards. Linda Godfrey talks cemeteries, deserted buildings, campgrounds, or military bases. Rosemary Ellen Guiley adds portals and thin spots to this list.
Oh, I like the thin spots. I'm going to get into that at some point.
And I would add ley lines, crossroads, geomagnetic anomalies, geological deposits, power lines, and sports bars.
Sports bars?
Yeah, because they're liminal. Why are they liminal?
Because they're ubiquitous and everywhere.
They're halfway between pubs and living rooms.
Ah, they're in the in-between state.
They're in between, yeah. I'm convinced. But reading into the stuff,
wow.
I know. Taking a page from folks like Guiley and Redfern, more creatures than not seen of ability to shapeshift, from people to werewolves to vampires to Bigfoots. I did it. It's not Bigfoots. We said it was Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
Dang.
It's like deer.
Can you just edit the S out later?
We'll see.
Dragons, otters, sometimes both directions, as we're going to see. Man to beast, beast to man. I won't be discussing vampires or werewolves today, just because they're so cliche, and we'll get to them at some point.
Yeah, they're their own genre kind of thing. Like you did the skin
walker.
The werewolf should have its own too,
Yeah, at some point we'll do vampires and werewolves. We're going to go a little light on them today, but I do want you to know. Do you know you're never more than 6 feet away from a werewolf?
I'm pretty sure that's spiders.
No. All right. Yeah.
You're like 3 feet from a werewolf right now, though.
That's true. Oh, a dwarf. Are you Gimli or you're a werewolf? I don't know.
Halloween time is awesome for me because there's so many things to choose from. When you got this much hair on your head, there's a lot of things you can do.
Definitely, I can see that. But again, I have a spreadsheet. I talked about this last time. It will come up at some of these things because it was definitely
the 180 column spreadsheet or whatever it is. But we're never going to format that right. I don't know how we're going to get that out.
But to give a little more details of the 40 shapeshifters, and this was just, again, there's thousands, but the first 40 I looked at, mimicry were 12 out of 40. I think the mimicry is probably the most common of the first 40 that I looked at. And I think the creepiest mimic is the Konakagigi. Konakagigii from Japanese folklore.
Whoa, that's quite the spelling. That's a lot of eyes.
It's the spirit of a baby left in the woods to die, so it's mimicking itself.
Oh, no.
And if you go to rescue it, it ambushes you and it crushes you.
Wow.
I think it squishes your head like Kids in the Hall.
So in the Christian
Crushes your
doctrine,
head.
it would be like an unbaptized baby left in the woods.
They have that too,
and the
yeah.
soul is just wandering.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yep. Cannibalism showed up 6 out of 37, whistling 5 out of 37. Again, therianthropes were also very prominent.
If it's only 5 out of 37 on the whistling, why can't I whistle ever? I mean, that's not
because
a big
the one we
percentage.
were doing was about whistling. I mean, one of them, the skin blanker, was part of that.
Gotcha.
And you're whistling.
Fair enough.
I actually said, don't, like, I guess you said it earlier. Whatever we say not to do, we do. So I guess that was my fault.
Just, if you want me to not do something, just don't say anything. If you tell me not to, I'm gonna.
Yeah. You did it subconsciously because you're
I can't even help
defiant.
it. Yeah.
But something off, missing anatomy, elongated anatomy is something else we see. Djinn, here's Rosemary Ellen Guiley. It's kind of the same problem. Even when they appear in beautiful human form, Djinn are said to still have a physical flaw that exposes their true identity. Most common are hairy legs and hoofed feet. Most shapeshifters around the globe have this built-in flaw, one part of their anatomy that they can't quite master. We talked about this a little bit, I think, already, because you were talking about maybe the really good, powerful ones can.
Right, the higher level they are, the more perfect the transformation.
Which was an interesting point. Red eyes were 8 of 37. Unspeakable act to turn into the monster was also very common. Some of these were expats, where they used to be part of the community, and then they become part of that outside. Many are nature spirits or guardian spirits, like the Leshy. The shamanic culture, we tend to find shapeshifters, but in some tribes, shapeshifting and shamanism is wholly absent. And for some tribes, these techniques seem to have been lost to the fog of time. We talked about that a little bit, getting more degraded as time goes on.
Well, and we've compared it to, the Jedi and the Sith and whatnot, and controlling their particular type of force. It takes teaching to do it. Even if you have the natural ability, someone has to teach you to use it.
Right.
So, yeah, if the tribe ends up with no more real shaman, so to speak, to teach anyone, then they're going to lose it entirely. Yeah.
And that's not every tribe. I'm just saying it's a trend. And I also think, though, that it's both as a parallel, where this stuff is struggling. At the same time, it always keeps bubbling up. And I think that's why it's so pertinent and so important for mankind and humanity, because if this thing keeps bubbling up, no matter what you do to it, I think there's maybe really something to some of these,
Yeah, it's like Hydra. You cut off one head, 2 grow back.
There you go. So it's going to become, look how popular shamanism and stuff is now. And I mention it because
Crazy
it
popular.
ties into shapeshifting so perfectly in a way. So I did kind of another shapeshifter roll call, and I know I did this last time, so I should have just done it. I should have just kept to the subject last time and done it this time, but I went with totally different ones. There's a couple that you're going to hear again, but basically it's all different. There's the Saci, it's Saciperere from Brazil. It's a one-legged black child dwarf. Sounds very gnome-like because he's got a little cap and smokes a pipe. Visibility
One-legged?
cloak. One-legged. There's a lot of times there's legs that are pointed backwards, or one leg, or there's again that one thing off.
So they just hop around?
I guess so. I mean, he travels in a dust devil, which is kind of Tasmanian devil kind of thing going on there.
They spin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah. They're spin walkers. Yeah.
Spin doctors.
Back to the 80s. Leshies, again, we mentioned the Leshy last time. Likes to laugh, whistle, and sing. Is a humanoid tree spirit, often depicted with wooden antlers. If angered, not respected, it's just like any other nature deity. Watch out. John Kachuba's book, and the reason I mention this is because Shapeshifters, a History, he discusses how the Leshy can transform into plants, animals, or humans, and it can shrink to a few inches or grow to the boughs of trees. And that's another really common theme for Shapeshifters.
Turning into plants, too, huh?
Plants. So we got a little either Toxic Avenger or Swamp Thing going on there.
My brain went to Little Shop of Horrors for some reason.
Yeah, Feed Me Seymour. That's a good one, too. Triffids. But Kachuba also mentions another shapeshifter I'd never heard of, the Longowapper from Antwerp, Belgium, that has this same ability, much like the Hide Behind. This from Shapeshifting History. The Longowapper or Long Whopper hid in canals. It's a shapeshifter with no set form. It can be anything and can be as small as a mouse or as tall as a building. likes to transform into a creature with legs so long it can peer into the windows of buildings and terrify the occupants.
Yeah, the 20-foot tall cryptid types or spirit types or whatever, that's pretty prevalent, right? Like
it's another trope.
There's a lot of really tall, like the elongation you talk about,
right,
and they end up like 20 feet tall. So
right. It's a trope that they can also get big or small. That seems
very Alice in Wonderland on that one.
Mm-hmm. Thing apparently has long, spindly legs so it can walk on the water. It has, again, that elongated anatomy we just talked about. His favorite guises are a beggar, a priest, a puppy, a kitten, or a beautiful woman. These are all the things Jeremy can go to Halloween as dressed as next time.
Just about anything.
Just some ideas. Just some ideas. There's the kitsune, a Japanese shapeshifter from the fox totem family. It's actually a reverse, a fox that can turn into a human. Usually chooses an attractive woman, guys, to lure men to their demise. This act is repeated by a great number of shapeshifters. There's all kinds of things that dress, looks like lures you in.
We got into that a lot with the... especially that camping story from the previous episodes. That was the skin
walker
episode. That was really cool.
Yeah, we have someone being called out of their tent to go in there. But the other one more specifically is, dudes who are, looking for love, and the shapeshifter, entices them in. It's like when Bugs Bunny dresses like a girl bunny.
It's the siren song in that case.
Same idea.
That would be the more apt reference, I guess.
And just like Guiley's Djinn description, they can fully transform. You can still see a fox tail when in human form. They carry around a ball of fire, which to enchant or be enchanted.
Oh, that's interesting. A bowl of fire.
A ball.
Oh, a ball of fire.
Yeah. That's another trope. There's the ball of fire. The women seem to be more vampiric or balls of fire, and the men seem to be more wolf or animal. In this section from the Handbook of Japanese Mythology, these next few, there's a Chinese, have something similar called a hulujing. It's a fox fairy, which is a cross between a kitsune and a vengeful ghost. The hulujing rises from its grave and shapeshifts into a seductive woman, scholar, or old man. It seduces victims and vampirizes the victims of their life force. Female hulujing especially like scholars for their virtuousness. I stayed ahead of that by being an unvirtuous scholar. So
hey,
totally
that's why we're such a good team.
Out.
I'm quite the unvirtuous scholar myself.
The hulujing has other powers and abilities that make it one of the most feared of all demons in Chinese lore. It can shapeshift into dead people, haunt places, and terrify the living. It can take on the appearance of living people. It can transport people through the air and enable them to pass through walls and close windows. The hulujing is invisible during the day, but can often be seen at night, especially lurking on the rooftops of homes.
That is an insane list of powers right there. And lurking on the rooftop. Why does that keep coming back to haunt me?
That keeps coming back. I keep finding things that like come from the outside in with a long tongue or climb up on the roof, and it's always...
I mean, that's crazy. It can take any form of anyone living or dead. It's invisible, and just that was a ridiculous list of powers, man. If that thing was in a comic book, it would be too powerful. You know what I mean?
Well, that last part was actually not from the Handbook of Japanese Mythology. That was from the Encyclopedia of Demons and Demonology, Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Oh, I think you said
one of my faves. One of my faves. And there's the Cadejo, Cadejo. You got to help me with my Spanish. It's a spirit dog of lower Central America.
Cadejo?
Yeah, I think it's Kawaho.
I would say Cadejo.
Kawaho. I bet you would.
Cadejo.
What do you call me?
No, that's Bendejo.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha. I've been called that, so I just, brings back bad memories. But it's described as a cow-sized, shaggy spirit dog with red eyes. In some places has deer or goat's hooves. White ones are good and protect travelers. Black ones are dangerous, although this is reversed in some regions. Also found near bridges. So that's, kind of another interesting one.
Yeah, and the bridges thing comes up a lot in a lot of stuff. The whole troll under the bridge, and
I think it was Red Fern.
But that's kind of a boundary too, right? You're going over a chasm that separates two areas.
I don't know if anybody had a crossroads. Did anyone? I got to go back and look, because crossroads is where you find tricksters and monsters.
Well, that's an old thing too. That's where you bring your guitar and make the deal with the devil.
Exactly, you meet the devil at the crossroads. Not uncommon. So we have. According to Teresa Bain's Bestiary, there's a shape-shifting vampire out there from Bolivian folklore, the Abchorchoncho Abchanchu, that preys upon the kindness of strangers. It's kind of the Blanche Dubois shapeshifter.
Yikes.
So, exactly. Yeah, so, exactly. It will help you sometimes, or it will help you get lost more times than not.
That's interesting.
There's the Tunda. It's an Ecuadorian Colombian shapeshifter with a more vampiric quality. It's a monstrous vampire, blood-sucking fiend that can appear as a beautiful woman or as a loved one to lure their prey. We've heard that before.
That's brutal. The loved one thing is always brutal.
Yep. And again, it can't pull off the transformation as a wooden leg instead of one real leg, one wooden leg.
Oh, that's okay.
It's odd.
So they do give you a sign.
Yep. There's a dog husband of the Quinault people of the Pacific Northwest. Tells of it. It's kind of another girl meets dog story. But then the offspring go back.
It's not that kind of podcast, man.
But the grandfather gets really mad at this, and he ends up killing. He gets mad and kills the father, the dog. The kids who are dogs or part dogs go back and kill the grandfather. It's a very brutal tale. But then all the kids have the ability to shapeshift between man and dog. So this is a...
Oh, so they're not just hybrids. They actually shapeshift back and forth.
Yep.
So that's a werewolf origin story right there.
There you go, from the Pacific Northwest. There's also the Bajang. Witches and sorcerers in Malaysia can bring forth a vampiric demonic creature through a magical ceremony involving a body of a stillborn child or the corpse of a family member. If the demon is male, it is called a Bajang. The female of the species is called a Langsur. If the caster is strong enough, he can bind the creature to his familiar, which can be passed down through the generations.
After all these episodes you've been doing, I don't think dead baby jokes are funny anymore.
No, I get it. But again, these are tropes. These are just tropes.
There's just so many dead babies involved with all this stuff. And I guess if you're going down to the evil side of things, that's a great way to designate some evil.
Yep. This one can change into a cat, a weasel, or a large lizard. So there's also the Tikbalang from the Philippines, half man, half horse. It's kind of a reverse centaur kind of thing. It's like the Motar.
So it's like a horse-headed man instead of a horse-bodied man.
It's a horse-headed man.
Like the Minotaur, but a horse.
Yeah. I was thinking the Motar, which is the half motorcycle, half man from those commercials. Pretty important. The Motar is something we should probably talk about. Yeah. We'll have it for the side trail.
I'll check it out before the side trail.
But the Tikbalang, it's older shapeshifter nature deities, have this ability to transform into several beasts. This one can be a monkey or an old man. Very tall and thin, elongated. Again, it mimics humans, lures people and prey. It has this kind of cackling laugh. Has the invisibility thing too. So.
Oh, there you go.
But it has blue eyes, which is odd.
Blue eyes.
So it's part Sinatra, I guess. It's a half.
That's a natural
half
color.
Crooner.
And you get the red and yellow eyes. That's like a very unnatural color for eyes. That's your usual tropes with this stuff, right? So
correct.
The blue eyes is not even that weird, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these usually glow, which makes it a little bit more.
Oh, like a glowing blue, though?
Usually people talk about glowing shapeshifter eyes.
Gotcha.
So there's the Mamu of the Aboriginal people in the eastern part of Australia. They tell the soul-destroying, devouring, malignant power called a Mamu. The term often translates as a monster, refers to both the destructive force itself and its diverse embodiments. A dog, a cat, a kangaroo, a bird, or, again, a ball of fire.
Oh, a ball of fire. That'd be awesome to be able to turn into a ball of fire.
And that was from Spectres of Reality, Mamu in the eastern western desert of Australia. These particular Mamus are cannibals that sometimes just sneak in and bite off a little piece of you, and then you get sick and die later, very Komodo dragon-y like.
Yikes.
Many shapeshifters, like anything else, are associated with illness. They're small, bald, sharp-teethed, bulging-eye little creatures running around the outback. Little Marty Feldmans, I guess.
Yeah, that's another trope with these guys is they don't want to just kill you. They want to, horrify you and torture you and then kill you.
Exactly. So there's also the Azotl, a legendary creature in Aztec mythology. The creature was taken as a mascot by the ruler of the same name and was said to be the fiend of the rain gods. It's most likely a water possum which possesses a dexterous hands like raccoons or a monkey's, as well as a prehensile tail, a hand on its tail. It's black and gray and pointed ears.
The hand
That's from
on
just
the tail,
Wikipedia. Yeah. So this one, actually isn't actually a shapeshifter, the Azotl, but.
So why is it on the spreadsheet, Maz?
Well, I looked into this one. I wasn't going to add it, but if you start to look into these things a little deeper, the name Azatl is also the name of this Aztec ruler who was a shapeshifter. So I'm thinking
weird.
I'm thinking add that to the list. More to come. We have any Aztecs out there or folks familiar with Aztec lore? If you could let us know a little more about that. For me, something with a prehensile hand tail and is named after a shapeshifter probably fits the bill.
If you got anything for us, email us at monsterloretour@gmail.com.
Thank you. And there's the Rakshasa. We talked about this a little bit last week. Sanskrit creature from Hindu mythology, a type of demon or goblin. Tusks, ugly eyes, curling awkward brows, carrying a variety of horrible weapons. It literally means destroyer. They have the power to change their shape at will to animals, monsters, or female demons, or beautiful women. They're akin to yakshas, or nature spirits, while others are similar to asuras, which are Hindu demons. The term Rakshasa, however, generally applies to those demons who haunt cemeteries, eat the flesh of men, and magically drain cows of milk.
Magically drain cows of milk.
Yeah, I guess that's... When something goes wrong, it's blamed on a monster, so that just got added probably because, the cow doesn't have milk again. It must be the Rakshasas.
I mean, for the people, they actually have to physically dig up the grave and eat them. Why do they magically remove the milk? And don't they just take it?
Yeah, I mean, that's not... Yeah.
I mean, by magically, do they just mean when nobody's looking?
Nobody's looking. But that was from Britannica, Hindu mythology, the Rakshasa, by the way. There's also red eyes, of course. They disembowel. There's one that they describe as having hair donning a wreath of entrails.
Gross.
Yeah.
It's like a poopy Medusa.
Yeah. Well, it's disembowel, rinse, repeat. That's just the way.
Oh, gross.
There's the Adza. It's a shape-shifting firefly vampire from Western Africa. I'm just going to cut through the rest of these. There's a were-tiger. It's a half-human, half-beast of India, Asia. It has the intelligence of a human, the strength and speed of a tiger, thick claws and sharp teeth. It also is known to be a shapeshifter. The Alp is a really cool one from German folklore. Vampiric spirit associated with nightmares, demons, and bogies. The Alp can assume different forms from seductive humans to animals, such as cats, pigs, birds, and lecherous dogs. May be disguised as a butterfly, released by the breath of a Horcrux, Horerczy.
A butterfly, that's new.
Another vampiric demon. Regardless of its form, the Alp likes to wear a magical hat, which confers upon it invisibility and supernatural power, including the evil eye.
I didn't realize invisibility was such a big trope with shapeshifters.
Well, that's where he comes into it. Gets like Rosemary Guiley would say, that's why everything's a Djinn, because the shapeshifters can also be Djinn, which can also be invisible, which also can change. Again, everything seems to be cryptoid instead of cryptid, which I don't like. We're all looking for a monster, not something that is everything. But sadly, that's
why things like Bigfoot are more enticing. Because they are just kind of the one thing that we're trying to find instead of this thing that can be invisible or look like this or look like that or be this thing or that thing. And like, how do you know?
But they do have the invisibility, and they do have to have this portally piece, and we can't seem to find them. And
even the Bigfoot can just disappear on you.
Yeah.
Not 9 foot tall ape walking through the woods suddenly gone.
Yep. I mean, even fairies, this is from Hancock again, from Supernatural. The tribe of fairies known amongst the Breton people of northern France, the Cornigan, Kornigan, could assume animal form and were able, moreover, to travel from one end of the world to another in the twinkling of an eye. They were said to dance in circles holding hands, but at the least noise disappear, and that's what we see. Again, it all seemed fairies, Djinn, all this stuff seems to sound...
I will say that... With just the way I look at everything, it was very much reminding me of fairies. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and we'll get to that at some point. But same thing with the Nishidaak, Nishidaak from Bengali, uses the sounds of loved ones to lure their victims into the woods. Same with nixies, pixies, water sprites, sirens. You came up with some of these yourself. It's endless. Mm-hmm. I wanted to end. Speaking of end, we're going to end this, and there's 1,000 more to add. Those are just some ones I picked, and I picked them because I wanted to go back in time a little bit, get some of the older ones. We're going to get to some of the newer ones, don't worry. But I wanted to kind of really get across how old some of the stuff is. And this one, I'm going to have you read just to show you again how old the whole shapeshifter genre is. This from Rosemary Ellen Guiley again. Kind of hints at some of the creepiness of the antiquity to come. It's about the archons from the Bible, and it'll kind of wrap up some of our monster roll call here.
Enter the archons. The chief story of the archons is told in one of the most important Nag Hammadi texts, those from Gnostic Gospels. The Apocryphon of John, said to be a vision given to the Apostle John, 185 CE. Here Sophia, without the consent of the spirit, she has a son, the monstrous Ealdabaoth, who has the likeness of a lion-faced serpent. He is the first and chief archon. Ealdabaoth has shape-shifting ability. He has 12 faces, so that when he goes among the seraphim, he can put a face before them. He shares their fire and becomes lord of them. He declares himself to be God and tells the angels, I am a jealous God, and there is no other God beside me.
And that from Encyclopedia of Demons and Demonology, Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Ealdabaoth then becomes the architect of the whole Garden of Eden debacle, then the flood. You might guess that he's kind of the demiurge from the Gnostic Gospels, all kind of tie in. But all these themes reach so far back into prehistory, and that's, but then today we have a goat man showing up at a barbecue or a lizard man romping through a Carolina swamp. We have these same things that we seem to be seeing. We're going to get there. We're going to get to some of the stuff today.
And you got the deer lady on Reservation Dogs.
Exactly.
It's a great show. Have you seen that?
Yeah. And she did it. She was
that character's great, dude.
Great.
The way she pops in and out, so good.
My favorite though is the guy on the horse.
The spirit guy.
He's
so funny.
It's perfect. If you haven't seen that show, it is really worth. And it has again probably the same trouble. Yeah, Bigfoot even made an appearance in that, by the way.
Oh yeah, huh? I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it makes no sense, though, why we kind of keep coming back to stuff. I even found a connection between this old poltergeist book I was reading. I've actually found a connection that sounded just like a shape. If you didn't know it was just a poltergeist thing, it sounds like another shapeshifter. So listen to this. From Sacheverell Sitwell's Poltergeist 1940, The Willington Mill Haunting, he describes a poltergeist that appears as a cat, a monkey, and a woman. It made all kinds of sounds from gutturals to whistles to, yeah, exactly.
Whistles.
But it also has these three things it can shift into.
Yeah, that sounds like like all the other things you were just talking about.
It's a ghost story, but it just sounds like a shapeshifter story.
Well, I mean, one of these Djinn-like shapeshifter things that can turn invisible. I mean, how can you tell the difference between that and a poltergeist?
This is where we put them into these camps. I talk about this at the end. And hold that, put a pin in that, basically. Pinned. Now we meet that somewhere else. Yeah, it sounds like kind of the same thing. I found it kind of everywhere I was looking, and again, that's why I did this.
Well, that's the point. Yeah, to show how connected all this is, how it might all really just be one big thing.
Yep. Shapeshifting seems to start with therianthropy again. It's like a chicken or the egg thing. Therianthropes are everywhere. We talked about this, but I wanted to again kind of hit this home as to kind of pre-humanity, how far this goes back. It's like some theories say it's pre-Homo sapien, which means other species had these same these same kinds of therianthropic things going on.
It's actually one of our ancestors kind of thing.
Well, I mean, like some of the ones that died out, like the Neanderthals might have dealt with therianthropic dreams kind of thing, or had the same shamanic initiation. It's pre-us. These themes. So the oldest civilization acknowledged by scholars, the Sumerians and Babylonians, were already, was Sumerians first, I think, were already steeped in monsters and evil spirits. They had this owl-woman hybrid Lilitu, who was the predecessor for the Hebrew Lilith. We're talking cuneiform tablets. So pre-Lechuza creatures carved into clay tablets. Now we still have people seeing Lechuza in New Mexico, an owl woman, and we have people talking about him from Sumerian times. And I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this.
Yeah, it really does go back as far as our history goes.
And then, again, this is a Guiley heavy episode, but she kind of, from her Demons and Demonology book again, she explains why Babylon, it was so spooky. 72 demons or Djinn captured by the legendary King Solomon, who imprisoned them in a brass vessel and cast it into the sea. The vessel was discovered by Babylonians who believed it contained a great treasure. When they broke open the vessel, the demons and their legions were set free, and they returned to their home. So essentially, it's kind of a Pandora's box.
Right, exactly.
Pandora's box back in the day. Their hero, Gilgamesh, same thing. He fought all these monsters. His best friend, again, we said, what was the joke I made? The boy in his squatch.
The boy in his squatch, yeah.
It's the
Just
same.
Just a boy in his squatch story.
Oannes was a Mesopotamian god who came out of the water half fish, half man, and he taught the Mesopotamians agriculture.
That's the merman.
Yeah. I think he just did it to get them to stop fishing. I think he had a hidden agenda, to be honest. But probably just, Demonology adopts this therianthropic or chimeric concept as well. This is Cavendish's The Black Arts, which is in Bones Library, by the way, if you're ever interested. I think it's also on Internet Archive, too, by the way.
Oh, there you go. Great resource.
That demons appear in grotesque and horrifying shapes is an old tradition. The Babylonians thought that evil spirits were so hideous that they might run away if shown themselves in a mirror. They had the bodies of the dogs, eagles, lions' paws, scorpions' tails, human skulls for heads, goat horns, and wings of birds. The early Christian fathers described devils as appearing in human form, and also as leopards, bulls, bears, horses, wolves, snakes, scorpions, or as a composite creature. And of course, lions, tigers, bears, oh my.
It's all chimeric.
Yes. And so demonology books also kind of look just like what we're talking about. There's therianthropes in the Bible as well. Can you name any?
I'm not that well versed, but I can't really. I mean, I know the general stories.
There's a cockatrice, which is a half cockerel, half snake, and beasts of Revelation. There's a few that are pretty chimeric-y, wild.
Yeah, okay.
The Greeks sprinkled therianthropes and monsters all over their myths. The Odyssey. You said the Cyclops earlier, I think.
I just like the Cyclops because of Crawl.
Yeah,
I'm dating myself a little with that one, but.
Oh, you gotta like it from the Odyssey. I mean,
at
least the Armand Assante version of the Odyssey. If you didn't read Homer, but
the Iliad and the Odyssey, great reads. Man.
I read the Odyssey 3 times. I never made it through the Iliad. I like.
Oh, really?
Forget the war. I like the monsters and the sirens.
The Odyssey is the good part. Yeah.
The Odyssey is awesome.
The Odyssey is like episodes 4 through 6.
Yeah,
and the Iliad is like 1 through 3.
Yeah,
it's
I could skip. Oh, are we doing George
sorry,
Lucas?
I'm doing
Are you George
Star Wars.
Lucasing again?
I'm doing Star Wars.
Don't Lucas this. Do not Lucas this. But move over to Mexico. The Mayans and the Aztecs had all their therianthropic serpent people, and Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, Tezcatlipoca. Egypt had a whole pantheon of therianthropes. Obviously, a little less evil. They seemed to be part of society. They held down good, honest jobs, usually involving death in the underworld. But it was more civic-minded. Unless you're an SG-1 fan, then you know the truth. They were actually, badass Graul.
Yeah, they just came through the portal.
The portal. The Middle East is fraught with Rakshasas and Djinns, as we said. From the same region, if you look at possibly the oldest megalith structure, this was on Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse. He goes to Göbekli Tepe, but then he goes to Kahana Tepe, and there's this huge half-man, half-snake kind of guardian. And he, Hancock calls it sinuous and slightly sinister. And this is going back to the oldest things we can find as far as structures. We talk about cave paintings. And
I'm going to go into just how old the Sphinx probably is at some point as well.
Yeah, the Robert Schoch stuff. So
that's all I'll say for now. But that's older than you think.
Oh yeah. I've read Fingerprints of the Gods.
Not older than you think, Maz.
Other people.
You're here with me, but
yep. No, I get it. Water erosion. But Rosemary and Guylen tracks the Middle Eastern Djinn back into antiquity as well, and I'm going to get back to that. Australia has a different slant on it. Like I said, it's this dreaming time, but it's the same kind of thing, but it's more of this shamanic dream time than... It seems to be taking place more of an altered state of consciousness than again, it's more cryptoid and it's more different state.
And we do keep coming back to that too. And I think that might be the key to the whole thing is it's really our mental state that allows these, observations, interactions and whatnot to happen. I think I in my mind, that's where the crux really lies.
In my mind, I'm going to Carolina.
It's not, is the monster there? It's, is your brain aligned to see it,
Yeah, I think at the different level of consciousness, different interpretation, different culture, different interpretation we're going to get in.
Yeah. And that's why what you said, one of the first things you said in this episode, there can be a crowd of people and a couple of them might see this thing happen and nobody else does.
Yep.
Feeds right into that. It's all
open.
wavelengths and vibrations.
Wavelengths, vibrations, good vibrations. It's very Beach Boys at the end of the day. So
don't Beach Boys me, dude.
It's an endless summer. It's a perfect reference right now because it's very hot.
Oh boy.
Still 110.
Kokomo's not even a real place. Like they really messed people up with that.
What?
Kokomo is not a real place.
He starts off, there's a place called Kokomo.
No, there's not. Check your map,
on.
dude. All the other places they mention in that song are real places. Kokomo is not a real place.
Well, I mean,
he John
it's part
Hughes
of the dreaming time, maybe.
He John Hughes them. Like people tried to go to the town in Illinois where all the John Hughes movies take place, and it doesn't actually exist.
Wow.
People started trying to book vacations to Kokomo, and it's not a real place.
Dang. I wonder, we could set up a travel agency, and this could be. I'll talk to you about this later. I just have an idea.
Ooh, cryptid travel agencies.
Oh, yeah, that's not what I was thinking, but that's even better.
We're going to book you tickets to a place that doesn't exist.
That's right. Brigadoon. Next stop, Brigadoon.
Kokomo.
Kokomo. You'll be back in 200 years, just like clockwork. But the Celts is another one I want to mention really quickly because they kind of got the shapeshifting is very different there, and the Celtic piece and a lot of their lore is kind of lost. But it's the same idea. It's still there. There's enough information to say that Oak, Ash, and Thorn is a good book, and there's one at Bowen's house. If you're ever there, there's another good one. I'll try to get the name, maybe an old business moment. But I think the Celtics had the same thing going on in that same area for their endless fairy tales that kind of happened up in that way. But there's even this vague connection between shamanism, shapeshifters, and King Arthur. And we'll talk about that in Arctic shapeshifters, by the way. And it's not the questing beast.
I was just going to say, didn't we already do that?
Nope. This is different.
Totally
Connecting
different thing.
King Arthur more directly to shapeshifting.
Oh, that's
awesome.
awesome.
Going to happen. And again,
that's in a future episodes, though.
Yeah, we're going to go north when we're done here. I can't
gotcha.
stop yet. I'm going to, I'll try not to, it's going to someday. Zool. There's no end to this arc. Only Zool. And again, among the oldest cave paintings, we did the whole Troy Frere, but there's other ones. I mean, there's this Stadel cave where, again, it's a man with a lion's head in Germany 40,000 years ago. I just, our first cave paintings, our first structures, first messages from everyone way back when was about therianthropes, shapeshifters, tricksters, twins, monsters. I mean, why was it such a prevalent theme for our ancestors?
Because the magic was still alive then, and since the magic has died.
Well, I honestly don't think, I think a lot of people still see stuff. So I don't know if the magic's died. It's dying, but it will resurge.
I like that thought a lot.
Yeah.
That, journey from hate to love right there, man. The magic's coming back.
And before we move on, is there any group you think I missed? Because I did skip one entirely. It's tough. I know when we talk about the whole world, maybe. I'm going to come back to Native Americans because there's so many times we're going to be talking about that.
Well, we did that. The skin
Walker
was a chunk of that. So
and there's more to come on that. But I do want to talk really quick about, there's kind of a Jungian depth psychology explanation too, for theriomorphic full-on animals like snakes and jaguars and the therianthropes that we keep meeting. I think, in Cisco, it was the hellhound. We have a friend, Greg, who saw an astral buffalo.
We haven't aired those interviews yet. Only Bone's interview so far.
I understand, but we have a few friends that saw kind of a three-legged coyote. I mean, we're kind of lousy with skin blanker stories from our friends. These all have these therianthropic components to them for the most part. Interviews coming soon. But the purpose of the Monster Roll call was really to just, again, get this kind of, why is this so prevalent? Why is this global? Why does this go so far back? But in Kachuba, believes therianthropes are precursors to shapeshifters, and that's what I wanted to kind of expand on this a little bit.
That would make sense.
In antiquity, it was the gods and goddesses who held the power of physical transformation, but as mankind became more enlightened, shamans, wizards, and other fae folk challenged the beliefs in these divinities and appropriated some of their supposed powers, including that of shapeshifting. That is from the transitions from Egyptian pantheons too, assuming these godlike powers. It's kind of the same idea. Rosemary and Guiley, again, pins the whole shape-shifting things on Djinn. Two phenomena that affect millions of people all over the planet, shadow people and ETs, two of many forms taken by the Djinn who have hostile intent towards humans. In addition, many of our entity contacts throughout history need to be re-examined. The Djinn are likely to account for archons, the Watchers, the Sons of God, the Nephilim, the Anunnaki, reptilians, fairies, demons encounters, romancers, shamans, jinns, sorcerers, sisters, conjurers, mugs, thugs, nitwits, halfwits, dimwits, vipers, snipers, conmen, Mexican band, buggers, thuggerers, bushwhackers, and Methodists. Sorry.
Give the governor harumph.
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 Sorry. That wasn't all from Rosemary and
Wow. That was very good Blazing Saddles there. You did like the whole thing.
Anyway, I want to get to our highlight stories real quick. I'm choosing some weird ones. So if you would read that page that's marked.
All right, this little excerpt is titled The High Behind, 1895 to 1898 by Classa Tosher Stillwell. In Clara Township on the west branch of Fishing Creek, a strange animal appeared in 1895 and was seen many times for 3 years. It was as large as a deer and pure white. What made it peculiar was that it stood higher on its hind legs than the rest of its body. As report after report came in, it grew into a terrible phantom that was feared by many. Hunters never could find it, and it vanished as suddenly as it came. It was called the High Behind. In 1895, when I was 5 years old, my sister Cleo and I were living on a farm on the west branch of Fishing Creek, with our parents, Benjamin and Zella Lyman Tosher. One evening, a group of young people gathered at our home. We were in our large living room, which was also the dining room, with a long extension table in the center. I was on the lap of my Aunt Nina Lyman. Most of the others were seated on hardwood chairs leaned back on 2 legs against the wainscoting, which extended around the lower portion of the room. There we sat and listened to the young folks talk about current events and the old folks tell tales of the past. My mother and other ladies lighted a lantern and went out into the yard. We heard terrible screams, and my mother shouted, "The High Behind! The High Behind!" The men grabbed their guns and rushed out the back door, followed by the dogs. My aunt dropped me on the floor, and we all followed the men. We saw nothing. The animal had gone through the orchard and out of sight. Strangely, the dogs would not follow the trail. The woman said the animal was within a few feet of them when it stamped its feet and snorted through extended nostrils. Its eyes were like balls of fire. What the High Behind was, we never knew. Some said it may have been a malformed albino deer, although no deer had been seen in that area for several years.
You know, the one thing I don't understand about this story is knowing a little bit about central Pennsylvania woods. There's no part of central Pennsylvania woods that doesn't have deer, so I don't...
I have a theory.
Go for it.
The late 19th century, there were no regulations on hunting. They probably hunted out all the deer in the area of where they were actually living.
The deer were like, forget this area.
Yeah,
I hate these
you'd
people.
probably have to go 10 miles out to find a deer kind of thing.
Yep. That was from Forbidden Land, Strange Events in the Black Forest, Robert Lyman. But it has the elongated piece. It's a mutant white deer. It's a knot deer. It seems Wendigo-y. It seems to have a witchy shamanic background. It's terrorizing an area. It's more phantom-like.
I put a lot of stock in dogs in these cases, too, and the fact that the dogs wouldn't chase it.
Yeah.
That tells you something.
Tells you something.
Oh, actually, I have a new dog walking story we'll do in the side trail.
Nice.
Teaser. My dog's been sensing things. It's weird.
Yeah, that's good. The High Behind, by the way, goes back to those fearsome critters from the Lumberjack, and you get a lot of these stories of things that, like, it's following you and you can't see it. And it can get really thin behind the trees. It can grow really tall, be really short. But this one doesn't sound like a hide behind at all. It's a very strange story from that area. But a deer would not be terrorizing an area. So this seems more... And it has these big back legs. It's very strange. It's
the higher back legs
phantom-like
than front legs. There are animals like that. I can't really come up with anything off the top of my head.
Another piece they mention in the same book is it can shift into a creature as thin as a sapling to hide, stalk prey, and ultimately kill. This is so vague because it's hard for people to see, but will become ever closer by running very fast between the trees. It's usually attacking the person in the rear. There's a little YouTube video about this that kind of captures it. It's a guy going through the woods, and every time he turns around, this thing gets closer and closer. Yeah.
That sounds like
cool.
that deer that was following me and my dog.
Yeah.
It kept creeping up on us. Every time I turned back around, it was closer.
I am very excited about that. So, but it's kind of another phenomenon spillover story. But the other one I wanted to do is I know most of you have not going to have heard of this one. So if you did hear, if the roll call disappointed you, because I did a lot of things you might have heard, I know I hit a couple you hadn't, maybe.
I'm going to say I hadn't heard of, like, most of those.
This one's even more obscure. And again, I looked in a place I was familiar, found an area I had a spooky story in, and something called the Guy Woggle. I think I mentioned this last time, but it's a shapeshifter who you've never heard of. Again, I kind of know the guy who wrote this story too, Lou. So I found this article about it, and I'm very interested to have you read a little bit about the Central Pennsylvania Guy Woggle.
I would be very happy to read about it, but looking at it, I would pronounce that Guy Woggle, not Guy Woggle.
It's Giwoggle, so I think Guy Woggle.
Well, yeah, if you're pronouncing it in American English, but most of the stuff with stuff like this is pronounced phonetically, right? And the GI would be Gee.
Well, we'll get Lou on, and we'll see if he has anything more to say, and then we'll bet a beer on it. A Bonehouse beer.
A Bonehouse beer. Love it. Oh, yeah, and today's episode brought to you by Bonehouse's Blonde Ale. Carbide Light. Very good. All right, anywho, stories of the Guy Woggle date back to the mid-1800s. And on July 21st, 2011, the government of Clinton County proclaimed it to be the county's official monster. That's awesome. The Guy Woggle was, according to legend, a kind of artificial werewolf creature that could be conjured or summoned by a witch. Ooh, it's like a golem or something. Sightings occur on the Clinton-Clearfield County border in West Keating Township back in the 1800s. The Guy Woggle is not the easiest creature in the world to physically describe. It was about 6 feet tall, shaped like a wolf, and stood on its back legs. Instead of front paws, it had bird claws, and instead of back feet, it had horse hooves. Oh my goodness. This was to confuse trackers trying to follow it. The legends all involved local women who were believed to be witches, casting spells to conjure up one of these things when a nearby farmer offended them. They would send the Guy Woggle to harass the farmer, which often took the form of annoying stunts and petty vandalism. Side note, this reminds me a lot of the gnome legends in Europe.
There you go.
Anywho, back to it.
The Travelocity gnome.
Yeah, there you go. The Guy Woggles didn't seem to be violent for the most part.
He can book you to Kokomo.
No, he can't, because it doesn't exist. Okay, let me get back to this. The Guy Woggles didn't seem to be violent for the most part. Farmers would wake up and find their crops trampled, tools damaged, and Guy Woggle tracks around the barn. In one of my favorite bits, a farmer found his cows frightened and trying to smoke a portion of a corn stalk. What the hell am I reading here, Maz? They were... So, like, somebody lit it like a cigarette and stuck it in their mouth?
There you go.
That's friggin' hilarious. I want to hang out with the Guy Woggle. Okay, back in again. Oddly, people driving near the Clearfield-Clinton border have reported seeing bipedal wolves running beside the road. With a quick glance, a gewoggle might easily be described as a bipedal wolf, so perhaps the creatures are lurking around the grave of their old adversary. The gewoggle has been known to get closer to civilization, though it's been a while. In February of 1909, when panic over the Jersey Devil reached a peak, creatures were sighted at night lurking on rooftops in downtown Lock Haven. The newspapers speculated at the time that this might be the gewoggle coming into town in search of prey.
And that again from Lou Bernard, pawilds.com. He's a folklorist and historian from that area, and I'd love to get that guy on to see if we can, win a Bonehouse beer.
Yeah, there you go. And the whole bipedal wolf running next to the cars.
Geez, you figured some things out, didn't you? That's in my notes here. But conjured by a witch, shamans, witches, sorcerers, oh my, you got this wolf dog that stands on the side of the road. It does have some chimeric pieces that don't make a ton of sense, but it does come around the same time as the Jersey Devil, which seems to be maybe their little fear contagion piece. Yeah, it isn't too far. It's only a couple, maybe it's how far would the Jersey Devil be? A few hours from there?
Yeah, not all that far. And it is interesting that that's the same time because the Jersey Devil was chimeric as well. And you'll find different descriptions of it in different accounts.
Yeah.
But they all kind of sound like what we just heard with that, with the wolf with the bird claws and the deer feet and stuff like that.
I'd say a 4-hour drive now I'm thinking about it, but depends on how fast you go, I guess.
When you can run at 80 miles an hour.
Yep.
Not that far.
That's right. But it does sound a lot like, and that's what you were getting at. It sounds like the Michigan Dogman. It's running along the side of the road.
The Dogman and
this is an old account.
Not just the Dogman, but a lot of skin
walker
stories as well.
Exactly. Things running. This is the mid-1800s, and we've got the same phenomenon of what I have family members who saw something very similar. Not in the 1800s.
In the 2000s.
In the 2000s, exactly. But again, Nick Redfern is kind of more in that, reading Morphing Monsters and Changing Cryptids, his Shapeshifter book. He kind of has this everything's a shapeshifter thing going. You might know him from Nessie or Chupacabra Road Trip or the one I just mentioned, Morphing Monsters and Changing Cryptids. He's on Ancient Aliens a lot, by the way. He turns up like a bad penny. But he thinks everything's a shapeshifter. So let's try a little test for this. Yeti.
Shapeshifter.
Taylor Swift.
Shapeshifter.
Barn owl.
Shapeshifter?
Styrofoam cup.
Ooh, shapeshifter.
The Senate House Intelligence Committee.
Shapeshifters?
No, those are reptilians, which are
shifters
related to skin
walkers.
Right. See, you're getting it.
Ah.
But Redfern focuses on the fact that these entities have a full wardrobe, multiple species thing going on. Makes a compelling case for all these cluster sightings, things kind of happening in the same woods, apes that turn into serpents, Bigfoots into UFOs, dogs turning into cats, living together, mass hysteria, the old Bill Murray thing. Mm-hmm. But Nick discusses cluster sightings like Rendlesham Park. He's got this monkey man sighting in the book, that Shropshire Union Canal area of England. They see this monkey, and then they see kind of a serpent sighting a week later.
That's weird.
My story, which we'll get to, there's going to be an episode on mine, is kind of cluster sighting-y too. And that, when I only thought about that more, when I started to read into these things, that it's actually a bunch of weird things happen that weekend.
Yeah, that does seem to be the way things cluster together like that.
Or do you want to hear like an even local thing that happened that is kind of a cluster sighting, kind of in a way?
Local where, here or back?
Well,
east?
Arizona. Remember Travis Walton? He was abducted by aliens back in the day.
That's the Fire in the Sky thing.
Yes, right? Fire in the Sky guy. He got picked up in Strawberry, and he got dropped off in Heber. And Heber is a big area that there's sightings for the Mogollon monster. So again,
I'm sure, yeah.
Where you have one thing, you kind of see the other.
That's where all the rim lakes are. That's where the rim has water. That would make sense that that's where the Sasquatch would be, or the Mogollon monster, excuse me.
But where you find one weird thing, you tend to find these triangles and cluster sightings.
It's like the Skinwalker Ranch thing. It kind of all happens in one spot.
Correct. You You just said the whole word, though, but it's okay. We'll get through
but
this.
it's the title of a thing.
That's what we already argued about. We were in the same.
It's tough. It's tough.
But the other thing is John Kachuba would add Jesus to the list of shapeshifters. We keep talking about him.
We changed Jesus?
Back. Yeah.
Jesus as a shapeshifter.
It's kind of Ishtadeva stuff where, like, depending on your level of consciousness, again, you're seeing something.
Well, I mean, he was just the human. I mean, it's the Holy Trinity, right? The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are all the same thing.
I think what he's getting at, and I'm not sure, I'd have to look at it. This is just me going on memory, but I think he was talking about when they couldn't identify Jesus and Judas had to kill it because everybody was seeing something different depending on their level of consciousness.
Oh, interesting.
So Judas had to actually give him away because no one could actually hone in on this guy.
You could only really see him.
He's a shapeshifter.
Yeah, you could only really see him if you were enlightened enough.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to annoy people, King Arthur fans out there, or Jesus fans. But this one, we came around to a lot of different things that might be shapeshifters. I thought I'd add the ones that are like, really? We're going to talk about that?
I had no idea how deep that list would go.
I didn't either until I started researching, But as mentioned, you can't help but notice not only do these sightings take place in the same types of areas, canals, waterways, graveyards, military bases, find people looking for the local urban legend like La Llorona, and then they have a dogman encounter, or they're looking for a UFO and they find a ghost monk, and you see these things, and that's what Redfern's getting at. And he's right. We have these areas, these thin places that just seem to be bubbling up with all kinds of oddities. Again, my theory behind every shapeshifter is a person of power, more specifically a shaman. They seem to be the human conduits of this nastiness. Where we find monsters, we often find ogres, beings of magic, witches, warlocks, nogwals, necromancers, shamans, djinn, sorcerers, conjurers, halfwits, dimwits.
And Methodists.
It's like kind of like an encoreman, isn't it? I believe all those can be traced back through prehistory and to shamanic power. And that's the argument I'm going to make in the next episode. Another really creepy story comes from Redfern's Shapeshifter book. It again has all the hallmarks to support my theory. If you dumped a cesspool onto a pet cemetery, which was once a Native American Indian burial ground, that kind of describes where we're going next.
Yeah.
London this is a hellish prison. This is a story again. We're going to read just a teeny little excerpt from it, but basically it's from Nick Redfern's Morphing Monsters and Changing Cryptids. London was struggling in the late 1500s. They had a lot going on, nothing good. So the prisoners of the time were worse off still. And one particular prison known as Newgate, Newgate.
So not the candy bar
Not.
filling.
I was just distinguishing between what I read and what's actually on the page.
Newgate.
Newgate is if you found a prison filled with nougat, that would be amazing compared to this place.
You can lock me up in there,
This is different.
Does it have chocolate walls?
Yeah. We're going to get to what's...
We are so off the rails right now.
We're so off the rails. But the old text reports truly revolting conditions. There was not enough food for even the general populace at that time, so the prisoners, as you can imagine, it was a bad scene. It was a hellhole that reeked of rotting flesh.
Yikes.
No one was cleaning the cells or even removing the dead, or those still alive would gang up and devour the new arrivals.
Oh, my goodness.
So many newbies entered the prison who were immediately overpowered and eaten because they formed like gangs. Redfern points to the story originating from one Samuel Rowlands, and an Old English-style tale is called, this is the whole title, The Discovery of a London Monster Called the Black Dog of Newgate, profitable for all readers to take heed by. Yeah, that's the name.
It's like a pack of wolves in the
1500s were a different time. They had different publishing companies back then, I imagine.
All those old names are long like that.
Yep. Near the height of this cannibalistic madness, well, here's a quick excerpt again from, and I would like you to read it if you would, from Nick Redfern's book.
Okay. A huge black dog suddenly manifested in one of the larger cells. A cell that held more than a dozen criminals. Rowlands continued that panic-filled mayhem erupted as the red-eyed canine fiend rampaged around the room, tearing into the bodies of the emaciated prisoners, ripping away skin and crunching down on weakened bones. when the cell turned into what looked like some ghoulish slaughterhouse and the prisoners were all quickly and violently dead, the monstrous hound suddenly vanished as if into thin air.
If you want to read that
Damn.
tale, yeah. If you want to read that tale in its entirety, that one is worth the cover charge. Nick Redfern's Shapeshifters, Morphing Monsters, Changing Cryptids. Checks all the boxes: red eyes, hellhound, cannibalism, the fear, the shapeshift. It just needed to be it needed to whistle like a crying baby, and we would add.
Right.
We would have been perfect.
Well, a dog just appeared in the cell.
It was the darkest place, manifested the darkest energies, I guess this is what spawned this monstrous creature. But there was an element I was looking for, and I went looking for the missing piece. And this was, again, because I felt there was more to the story than what I read. So I kind of juggled Samuel Rowland's Black Dog of Newgate Peace with that wonderfully long title. And I did find it. It is free on the Juggle, the 1596 version.
Wow.
Which went straight up to number 1.
Yeah. Well, that's impressive that's actually on there.
Yeah, it was hard to I'm going to try to read it, but it's some old English, and maybe but I found the piece I was missing, and let me read and then we can discuss.
Okay.
In the reign of King Henry III, there happened such a famine through England, but especially in London, that many starved for want of food, by which means the prisoners of Newgate ate up one another, but commonly those that came newly in, and such as could make but small resistance. Amongst many others cast into this den of misery, there was a certain shoaler, brought thither upon a suspicion of conjuring, and that he by charms and devilish witchcrafts had done much hurt to the king's subjects, which shoaler and mauger, which means despite, his devils, furies, sprites, and goblins, was by famished prisoners eaten up and deemed passing for good meat. Again, they were eating the Leavys.
Ate a shaman.
They ate a shoaler, which is a shaman. A Djinn, or a Djinn is the other argument, I guess.
Oh, no.
This being done, such an idle conceit possessed the minds of the poor prisoner that they supposed nightly to see the shoaler in the shape of a black dog walking up and down the prison, ready with the ravening loess to tear out their bowels. For his last human flesh they had so hungrily eaten, and all they hourly heard, as they thought, strange groans and cries, as if it had been some creature in great pain and torments. Whereupon such a nightly fear grew amongst them, that I turned to frenzy, and from a frenzy to desperation, in which desperation they killed the keeper, and so many of them escaped forth, but yet whithersoever they came or went, they imagined the black dog to follow, and by this means, as I do think, the name of him began.
Wow.
Yeah. So Redfern had a story. I looked a little bit deeper. I found a shoaler, which is Scholler, which I think Rosemary Ellen Guiley would call a Djinn. I would call a shaman, but it was a conjurer.
Sitherer.
A sitherer. Forget all of them. We're all wrong. It's a sitherer.
A sitherer.
But the one reason Rosemary Ellen Guiley has a point is because the Djinn's favorite guise is a black dog. So that seems to be one of the common tropes on that angle.
So, wow.
Yeah.
They ate a shoaler, and he came back and haunted them as a dog, and then killed probably the guys that ate him.
A dozen of them.
Which was probably the dozen guys.
Correct.
It was probably the cell.
He went after the ones that ate him.
And wow.
And I kind of felt it was missing. I read the story, and I was like, this dog appears.
Yeah, like where did it come from? That's
from?
Exactly what I was thinking. Like, why did this dog just... Well done, Maz. That's great research.
I was amazed that a 1596 thing was available, and I was amazed to find the answer that I was kind of looking for. So it was an exciting moment in sports.
Yeah.
So I also did one more experiment I want to discuss really quick, and it was, again, because I was in the I was like, wow, I'm on a roll here. So I picked up my handy-dandy Weiser Field Guide to Cryptozoology and wondered if using this new shape-shifting kind of tropes, if I could spot something that maybe just sounds like it's not, and maybe I can find some piece of the puzzle that sounds like it is, do further research, and determine that it's a shapeshifter.
Okay.
And I stopped about 15, 20 pages into my flippings, and it was on the Sasabonsum. According to the African Ashanti mythology, there's a hard bat-like creature from southern Ghana, Togo, and the Ivory Coast called the Sasabonsum. It is reported to be the size of a man with a wingspan of nearly 20 feet. The Sasabonsum has defined ridges above its eyes, long teeth. The creature is also said to have an emaciated body and twisted legs. This is from, again, the Weiser Field Guide to Cryptozoology. So what I honed in on was the emaciated body and the twisted legs. That's the moment. So what I did was actually just research the Sasabonsum. This is what I found. Asante or Ashanti religion, part of the Akan people. We're talking about Ghana, Africa. The main role of the Asante shaman, Akamofo, is to be an intermediary between divinity and human beings. There was a huge movement by the British colonizer early in the 1900s to eliminate witchcraft, which again demonized the Sasabonsum even more. This is again very common. This from the Journal of Philosophy, Culture, and Religion. The Sasabonsum is called the forest monster, another supernatural being which inhabits the forest. The Akan believe that there is only one Sasabonsum, unlike other spirit forces, which are many. It's most feared and is known to be a tall, hairy, wild-eyed monster with misshapen feet facing both ways. So again, we start to see the feet going the other way.
Yep, the dysmorphia.
He sits high above among branches of odum tree and is said to use his feet to hook up unwary hunters or other passers-by. The modus operandi of the Sasabonsum is wholly evil in nature, and above all, he is in league with the witches and magicians. That's from Evans, 1950, and Apuku, 1978, a reference within a reference. This relationship that exists between the Sasabonsum and witches is expressed in the Akan maxim: when Sasabonsum attends a funeral, he lodges with the witch. And that was from Multiplicity of Ahunum Spirits in the Akan Spiritual Cosmology, Journal of Philosophy, Culture, and Religion. So we have reversed anatomy, elongated bits. We have this shaman-witch connection.
Right, the connection, the witch/shaman connection, yeah.
And the last piece I found was from Mary Kingsley's Travels in West Africa. Some Akan, the tribe, refer to the Sasabonsum as being witches themselves. And this is also from her. Kingsley went on to describe how certain... Actually, this is someone commenting on her travels. It's from Nature and Supernatural Nature. It's a WordPress blog commenting on Kingsley's travels. Kingsley went on to describe how certain people, she called them witches, could utilize Sasabonsum's power by creating a sutman. First, they carved a figure from a piece of wood or plant root. It was then daubed with blood, red earth, and rum. Sasabonsum was called upon to enter the sutman, and juice from certain leaves would be squeezed onto that object. If a hissing noise was heard, it was meant that the Sasabonsum was present in the sutman. Sutmans could be employed for both benign and malignant means, for instance, to cause death or to protect against fires and accidents.
So it's just all a matter of how you want to project it. You can guide it however you want.
Well, it sounds like a voodoo doll.
Yeah.
There's a Tupalak, which is this Inuit version of that. But it's a shaman creating this thing and going, so again.
It's like a golem again. Like that kind of keeps coming up.
Yes, like the Golem of Pra stories, if you remember those. So basically, you mess with a being of power, they can create something that can come alive and defend. The Sasabonsum seems to be one of these things. It seems to follow all the tropes, and it seems, if you go into the research, it kind of directly connects more to shamanism and witchcraft. Then you would just meets the eye, which is, again, what I thought. I found some odd piece, the emaciated piece and the twisted legs. Right. Read into it, it's about backwards legs, and then it becomes something that was conjured by a witch or is a witch itself. So I came to the conclusion, dear monster hunters, next time, talk to the town shaman, not just the woman with the missing chickens. Best regards, Maz. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I found.
Don't talk to the victims. Talk to the people who would know about these things. Exactly.
It does get crazier. That's where we're going to be heading next week. We're going to do kind of our scales at the end of that. We're going to I'm basically next week, I really want to make my case for why it's the shaman. Rosemary and Guiley, if you read the Djinn connection, she makes the case why it's Djinn. If you read Nick Redfern, he makes the case for why he just focuses on the shape-shifting component of this.
Right.
And next week, I really want to bring it home with it. This is sent me toward shaman, and I'm going to kind of bring it on home with my own theory.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the plan for next week. And, I think we should probably wrap it up because I hear the baby crying.
Baby crying?
Yeah.
I don't have a baby. You got a baby? Nobody's got a baby here.
Oh shit.
That could happen if you try to out the Djinn, man.
Yeah, so we're going to talk nicing. Djinn are really good, and I actually think they're great for the economy.